is getting national attention for the way that she's spending taxpayer dollars.
WGN Investigates has learned South suburban politician Tiffany Henyard has lost another key ally. Until recently,
as information that indicates the FBI has launched an investigation into controversial Dalton.
In an astonishing and unforeseen development that could easily be mistaken for a scene from a high-stakes thriller, the Federal Bureau of Investigation conducted an extensive raid on the residence of Tiffany Henyard, the self-proclaimed super mayor of Dalton, Illinois. Investigators uncovered an enormous sum of money concealed as though it were an illicit treasure hoard. What initially appeared to be the promising journey of a small-town leader has dramatically unraveled into a sprawling scandal centered around the alleged misuse of public funds. The situation has cast an unflinching spotlight on an extravagant lifestyle that could rival even the most elite members of Hollywood's celebrity circles. Henyard, who once basked in the public eye with bold declarations and wielded her self-bestowed title as if it were a regal crown, now finds herself at the mercy of both intense public scrutiny and an unforgiving federal investigation. The recent raid did not merely reveal an eye-watering sum of hidden cash, but also unearthed a shocking tale of unchecked excess and ostentation, one allegedly financed by the very taxpayers she had sworn to represent. Revelations from the investigation have exposed an alarming pattern of extravagant expenditures: luxurious vacations, extravagant designer shopping excursions, the construction of an opulent $500,000 driveway for her mother, and other jaw-dropping financial indulgences. These discoveries have positioned Henyard directly in the center of a mounting legal firestorm. Her lavish personal spending habits have drawn comparisons to pop culture figures such as the Kardashian family. However, unlike reality television personalities who freely enjoy their wealth, Henyard's extravagant lifestyle appears to have been built on the financial struggles of an entire township. While she enjoyed an existence filled with grandeur and excess, Dalton, a town now drowning under an overwhelming $3.5 million debt, presented a stark and tragic contrast. The citizens of Dalton, who had placed their faith in her leadership, now face the bitter realization that their town's financial crisis may have been exacerbated by the very individual entrusted with its governance. Henyard's ascent to political power was both rapid and dramatic. Following the unexpected passing of former Mayor Frank Celli, she assumed the responsibilities of mayor, an appointment that raised considerable suspicion at the time. However, despite the initial concerns regarding her suitability for office, she managed to temporarily quiet her detractors by offering ambitious plans and grandiose assurances of a revitalized Dalton. Positioning herself as a beacon of hope for the town's future, she promised transformation and progress. Unfortunately, those assurances swiftly began to unravel, giving way to escalating controversies and widespread disillusionment. Under Henyard's leadership, transparency within the local government effectively became non-existent, and those who dared to voice opposition were silenced with unsettling efficiency. She moved with alarming speed to consolidate power, reportedly transforming Dalton's governance into a private empire, while the town's citizens suffered the consequences of deteriorating municipal management. By the year 2021, Henyard had solidified her authority by officially winning the mayoral election, further cementing her influence as a formidable political figure. Her ambitions, however, extended well beyond the mayor's office. She simultaneously acquired the additional role of supervisor for Thornton Township, thus merging two highly influential governmental positions under a single individual. This maneuver substantially increased her annual earnings, inflating her salary to an astonishing $200,000. However, with great power came an increasing tendency toward unchecked and unfettered authority. The unfolding events of Henyard's tenure could best be described as a political spectacle marked by extravagance and absolute control. Detractors allege that she governed Dalton as though she were royalty, utilizing taxpayer-funded municipal resources as though they were her personal financial reserves. Investigative reports documented instances of excessive spending on lavish trips to Las Vegas, disproportionately high security expenditures, and questionable financial contributions directed toward her private charity, an organization that, according to critics, lacked fundamental transparency and accountability. Henyard also allegedly perfected the art of political intimidation, securing unwavering loyalty from key allies while systematically eliminating opposition. Those who questioned her actions or policies were purportedly met with outright hostility or swift removal from their positions. Despite her calculated efforts to maintain a tightly controlled public image, cracks in her carefully constructed persona began to emerge. As Dalton's financial crisis became increasingly impossible to ignore, Henyard's administration struggled to maintain its grip on credibility. Public funds were rapidly depleting, roads remained neglected and in disrepair, and essential municipal services continued to deteriorate. The once hopeful residents of Dalton, who had initially placed their trust in her leadership, gradually became disillusioned as they watched their town crumble under the weight of financial mismanagement and apparent corruption. Meanwhile, Henyard's fiercest critics remained relentless in their pursuit of accountability. They persistently flagged dubious financial transactions, raising alarm over exorbitant public expenditures that appeared to serve personal interests rather than community welfare. As public outrage swelled, social media platforms became digital battlegrounds where Dalton residents expressed their anger over the suspected misappropriation of taxpayer dollars. Many demanded explanations, questioning how such brazen extravagance had been permitted to continue unchecked for so long. The breaking point arrived with the direct intervention of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Agents uncovered damning evidence strongly suggesting that Henyard had been at the center of extensive financial misconduct. The depth of the unfolding scandal now threatens to shake the very foundations of Dalton's local government. As the federal inquiry presses forward, the once unshakable political stronghold of Tiffany Henyard now appears increasingly vulnerable. With each new revelation, public trust in her leadership continues to erode, and demands for justice grow louder. Whether Henyard will ultimately be held accountable for her alleged transgressions remains an open question. However, one thing is certain. The ongoing investigation promises to bring even more shocking developments to light, ensuring that the story of Dalton's embattled mayor is far from over. Henyard's misconduct extended far beyond simple financial negligence, delving into the blatant misuse of funds for personal enrichment. The discovery of millions of dollars hidden within her residence during the Federal Bureau of Investigation raid served as the final and undeniable confirmation of wrongdoing for countless Dalton residents, many of whom had already spent years feeling abandoned by what they perceived as an administration marked by neglect and mismanagement. As these shocking revelations continue to unfold, Henyard has responded with an air of defiance, dismissing the allegations as nothing more than politically motivated attacks designed to tarnish her reputation. Through social media, she has sought to rally her base of loyal supporters, even resorting to cryptic messages meant to evoke solidarity. However, these efforts have proven largely ineffective, as the growing public demand for her resignation only intensifies. The most pressing question now is whether Henyard's defense will hold up under the sheer weight of the damning evidence stacked against her, or if the ongoing federal investigation will further unravel the hidden inner workings of her administration. Rumors persist that Henyard's closest allies, once unwavering in their loyalty, may be feeling the mounting pressure of the legal consequences ahead. Reports suggest that some members of her inner circle, recognizing the potential legal ramifications, may be cooperating with investigators in a desperate bid to protect themselves. With each passing day, new details emerge regarding the extent of the mismanagement, leaving Dalton residents and political analysts alike wondering just how much more remains undiscovered. Henyard's tenure as mayor of Dalton began with ambitious promises of revitalization and a commitment to public service. She entered office as a charismatic and energetic figure, initially celebrated as a local celebrity who seemed determined to bring progress and transformation to the struggling community. She captured the imagination of Dalton's residents with sweeping plans, including initiatives such as improved housing for veterans and seniors, as well as new economic developments meant to breathe fresh life into the town. However, these once lofty ambitions quickly soured as federal investigators began scrutinizing her financial activities, uncovering increasingly troubling evidence of systemic misuse of public funds. The findings painted a damning portrait of an administration that had allegedly betrayed the very trust of the people it was sworn to serve. At the core of the mounting scandal lies the Henyard Care Foundation, a supposed breast cancer charity that bore her name and was initially presented as a noble philanthropic endeavor. However, upon closer inspection, investigators found that the organization functioned largely as a facade, with many of its generous donations reportedly coming from taxpayer dollars rather than legitimate charitable contributions. What had been marketed as a beacon of goodwill and community support was instead exposed as yet another avenue for Henyard's alleged financial exploitation. This revelation further infuriated Dalton's diligent taxpayers, who were horrified to learn that their hard-earned money had been used not for charitable causes, but to fund Henyard's lavish vacations, extravagant fine dining experiences, and a personal collection of designer handbags that could rival the inventory of an upscale boutique. One of the first and most glaring red flags of Henyard's administration was her shocking travel expenditures. In the span of just 5 months, she reportedly spent an astounding $67,000 on travel expenses alone, an amount that far exceeds the annual income of many of the town's residents. While Dalton's municipal budget suffered under the strain of financial depletion, Henyard appeared to be enjoying a lifestyle akin to that of a celebrity on a glamorous reality television show. Her excessive indulgences have sparked widespread outrage, particularly among hardworking taxpayers who continue to struggle under the weight of the town's ongoing financial instability. A particularly infamous example of her extravagance was a supposed business trip to Springfield, which, upon closer examination, appeared to have transformed into a personal getaway rather than an official government excursion. As the scandal continues to unfold, the question remains, how much longer can Henyard evade accountability? With investigators closing in, growing public outrage, and cracks forming within her inner circle, the once powerful mayor's hold on Dalton appears increasingly fragile. The full extent of the misconduct may still be unraveling, but one thing is certain. Her reign of unchecked excess and alleged corruption is facing its most formidable challenge yet. The extravagant spending spree that left taxpayers seething with anger was an astonishing display of excess, transforming what should have been a straightforward government function into a full-scale spectacle. Instead of conducting official business with financial prudence, Henyard reportedly indulged in luxury, securing lavish hotel accommodations, accessing high-end amenities, and incurring exorbitant expenses, all at the public's expense. Henyard's entourage, which accompanied her on these elaborate excursions, was notably sizable and included unconventional personnel such as a personal DJ, a drone photographer, and motorbike escorts. A fleet of vehicles, provided by both Dalton and Thornton Township, further added to the extravagance, ensuring that no expense was spared. The public purse also covered thousands of dollars in fine dining, allowing Henyard and her associates to revel in gourmet meals while taxpayers struggled with the town's financial instability. Adding yet another layer of controversy, Henyard allegedly found ways to personally profit from these publicly funded expenditures in unusual and ethically questionable manners. One particularly baffling scheme involved the purchase of T-shirts and hoodies using Thornton Township funds, which she later sold for personal profit. When questioned about these financial transactions, she refused to offer any explanation, fueling mounting suspicions of gross mismanagement and self-interest. Her blatant disregard for transparency only deepened the mistrust of Dalton's residents, who were left wondering just how much of their hard-earned tax dollars had been funneled into questionable ventures. Among the most audacious displays of self-promotion was Henyard's use of taxpayer money to fund large billboards featuring her own image, not for any official campaign or municipal announcement, but solely to glorify herself as a leader. This brazen act of vanity drew widespread criticism from both residents and political opponents, who viewed it as an unethical appropriation of public funds for personal gain. Meanwhile, essential municipal needs remained unaddressed, further exacerbating public frustration. Henyard's unchecked spending spree did not stop there. Extravagant business trips, costly self-promotional campaigns, and luxurious indulgences became the defining characteristics of her tenure, painting a stark contrast between her personal lifestyle and the financial struggles of Dalton's citizens. While residents bore the financial burden of her reckless expenditures, their once hopeful vision of progress under her leadership eroded, leaving behind a cautionary tale of unchecked power, greed, and betrayal of public trust. Tiffany Henyard's time as mayor of Dalton has become a textbook case of political scandal, demonstrating how a leader's indulgence in personal extravagance can devastate the very community they are meant to serve. As Dalton sank deeper into financial turmoil and faced an ever-growing budget deficit, Henyard appeared increasingly detached from the harsh realities faced by her constituents. Reports suggested that she treated Dalton and Thornton Township as personal ATMs, withdrawing public funds at will to finance her lavish lifestyle while skillfully deflecting accountability. This growing attitude of impunity only served to alienate the very residents who had once placed their trust in her leadership, shattering their faith in her ability to guide the town toward recovery. Meanwhile, the intensifying federal investigation into Henyard's actions cast an even darker shadow over her administration. As mounting evidence of her alleged misconduct came to light, questions about her priorities, ethics, and governance became impossible to ignore. Despite her repeated attempts to deflect blame by framing the accusations as politically motivated attacks, her credibility eroded further with each passing revelation. Her attempts to rally support through self-glorifying social media posts and vague calls for solidarity fell flat as the community's outrage reached a fever pitch. What began as a promising leadership story has now unraveled into a troubling saga of ethical breaches, financial recklessness, and potential criminal activity. Henyard's misuse of public funds, once dismissed by some as simple overreach, has now painted an undeniable picture of a leader who prioritized self-promotion and personal luxury over the well-being of her struggling constituents. Public money meant for community development and essential services was reportedly diverted to bolster Henyard's brand and extravagant lifestyle, an unforgivable affront that left many questioning her judgment, integrity, and ability to govern. From her reckless spending habits to her questionable security arrangements, Henyard's time in office has exemplified an ego-driven leadership style that only deepened Dalton's financial crisis. One of the most egregious examples of mismanagement was her insistence on a taxpayer-funded 24/7 personal security team, which ultimately cost the town more than $1 million, an appalling and unjustifiable expense at a time when Dalton was already struggling to stay afloat. As the scandal continues to unfold, and as the investigation into her actions progresses, the question remains, will Henyard be held accountable for what appears to be a blatant abuse of power? With the weight of overwhelming evidence pressing down on her administration and the voices of disillusioned residents demanding justice, her once unshakable grip on Dalton's leadership appears increasingly tenuous. What was once an image of power and promise has now been overshadowed by controversy, leaving the fate of her political career hanging in the balance. For a town already drowning in debt, Dalton's ongoing financial struggles only worsened as significant tax dollars were drained to provide Henyard with round-the-clock protection, even during her out-of-town trips. This extravagant expenditure stood in stark contrast to the daily hardships faced by many of Dalton's residents, who worked tirelessly just to make ends meet. Outrage intensified when reports surfaced revealing that one security team member had allegedly earned an astonishing $113,000 for working just 33 hours in a span of 2 weeks, a highly questionable arrangement that immediately raised suspicions of time inflation and corruption. This excessive security detail, which far exceeded the norm for a small-town mayor, symbolized the unchecked spending and inflated priorities of Henyard's administration. The staggering overtime payments only deepened Dalton's already dire financial crisis, further diverting resources away from essential community services. However, the waste of public funds did not end there. When Dalton's police chief refused to comply with Henyard's increasingly extreme demands regarding security measures, she swiftly dismissed him. This abrupt move not only embarrassed local law enforcement but also raised further concerns about her ability to handle dissenting voices. It became evident that Henyard's administration prioritized consolidating power over fostering community growth or adhering to principles of transparency. Her removal of officials who challenged her authority reinforced the perception that her leadership was driven by self-interest rather than a genuine commitment to public service. Residents who had once hoped for meaningful change under her guidance were left disillusioned and enraged as the gap between Dalton's financial decline and Henyard's extravagant lifestyle became impossible to ignore. Adding to the controversy were shocking revelations of financial scheming that bordered on the absurd. During her short time in office, Henyard orchestrated a reckless spending spree on designer purchases, luxurious accommodations, and unnecessary expenditures. Funds that had been intended for vital community improvements were reportedly redirected to support her personal projects, while receipts revealed the town sinking further into debt as her unchecked spending habits spiraled out of control. One particularly infamous example involved a business trip to Springfield, which quickly transformed into a lavish personal getaway. What should have been a straightforward government function instead became an extravagant affair, complete with premium hotel stays and upscale dining, all billed to taxpayers. Despite Dalton's worsening debt crisis, Henyard continued to live, as though she were untouched by the financial abyss her administration was actively creating. This blatant disregard for fiscal responsibility further fueled widespread anger among residents, who bore the brunt of her mismanagement. Her unapologetic approach to self-promotion only added another layer to the growing public outrage. Henyard brazenly used taxpayer money to fund billboards featuring her own image, an act widely criticized for its ethical implications and its insensitivity to a town struggling with financial instability. Her attempts to justify these expenses as part of a leadership strategy fell flat, especially as the community faced shrinking resources and unmet needs. Even as skepticism regarding her priorities grew, some of Henyard's most ardent supporters attempted to defend her actions, framing them as ambitious leadership. However, the weight of her alleged misdeeds quickly overshadowed such justifications. The widening divide between Dalton's suffering residents and Henyard's lavish lifestyle painted a damning picture of a leader who had prioritized personal grandeur over public service. As the town continued to struggle, the outcry against her administration grew louder, demanding answers, accountability, and ultimately justice. Such arguments highlight how Tiffany Henyard's tenure as mayor of Dalton has spiraled into a chaotic saga of alleged corruption, retail fraud, and misconduct, leaving residents outraged and her leadership under intense scrutiny. Despite mounting questions regarding her actions, Henyard brushed off the backlash, attributing it to the pressures of being a public figure. However, holding public office does not grant immunity from financial mismanagement, and Henyard's alleged misuse of funds has reportedly plunged the town into a multi-million-dollar deficit. This has only intensified frustration among residents who feel betrayed by a leader they elected to improve their community, not to devastate it. The most egregious claims against Henyard include reports that she used public money to fund extravagant vacations alongside village staff, further fueling public outrage. While Dalton's budget continued to crumble, Henyard's indulgent lifestyle and lavish shopping sprees starkly contrasted with the harsh financial realities faced by her constituents. Her time in office has become a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked power and the exploitation of public resources for personal gain. In a town already struggling with escalating debt, the scandal surrounding Mayor Tiffany Henyard extends beyond financial misconduct to encompass allegations of retribution against those who dared to challenge her leadership. Henyard's administration has gained notoriety for turning governance into a series of punitive measures and power plays, where dissent is allegedly met with harsh consequences. Employees and business owners who failed to comply with her demands or refused to align with her controversial practices reportedly faced targeted retaliation. One striking example involves longtime Thornton Township employee Boeing Thrash, who claims he was unjustly dismissed after refusing to participate in Henyard's questionable schemes. Thrash alleges that Henyard sought to replace a township attorney with someone favored by her assistant and offered him a $100,000 pay increase to comply. When Thrash refused, he was fired, a move deemed retaliatory and emblematic of Henyard's vindictive leadership style. Thrash's case is just one of several legal battles currently brewing against the embattled mayor, revealing a troubling pattern of retaliatory behavior aimed at consolidating her power. Former employees have filed multiple lawsuits accusing Henyard of wrongful termination, harassment, and intimidation. One of the most glaring cases involves Carmen Carlisle, a former trustee and member of Henyard's team who has since turned whistleblower. Carlisle openly criticized Henyard's allegedly deceptive practices and exposed a culture of fear and coercion within the mayor's administration. According to Carlisle, Henyard misused police resources to intimidate critics, sending officers to their homes in an attempt to silence dissent. Many have described this move as an abuse of power, further contributing to the growing sense of fear and distrust among residents. In addition to these claims, Henyard's former assistant, P. Dukes, has filed a lawsuit alleging sexual harassment during a taxpayer-funded trip. Dukes asserts that after reporting the harassment, she faced swift retaliation, including being placed on unpaid medical leave. This, combined with a rising number of lawsuits from former employees, paints a damning picture of an administration riddled with ethical violations, mismanagement, and a blatant disregard for the well-being of both staff and residents. Despite the mounting evidence and increasing public outcry, Henyard continues to evade accountability, raising serious concerns about the unchecked power she wields. Residents, once hopeful for a leader who would uplift Dalton, now find themselves at the center of a scandal that has left their town in financial and political turmoil. Desperate attempt to divert attention from her own actions. Supporters have remained largely silent or defensive. Some attempt to portray her actions as bold leadership in challenging circumstances, but these defenses have done little to quell the anger of residents who feel betrayed by a leader they once believed would revitalize the town. The ongoing lawsuits, along with reports of harassment, intimidation, and unethical behavior, have left many questioning Henyard's fitness to lead. Under Henyard's leadership, the town of Dalton seems less like a functioning municipality and more like a personal fiefdom. Allegations of corruption, retaliation, and financial mismanagement have become the norm. Reports suggest that workers have been coerced into spying on critics and digging up dirt on Henyard's opponents, creating a toxic political atmosphere under the guise of public service. Henyard, however, vehemently denies these claims. In a heated village board meeting, she maintained her innocence, framing the accusations as part of a smear campaign against her. Despite her protestations, the growing body of evidence suggests otherwise. Under Henyard's leadership, Dalton now faces a $2 million deficit, with unpaid debts for essential services like street paving and tree trimming piling up. To make matters worse, the town has not undergone an annual audit since 2021, leading to a lack of financial oversight and leaving Dalton's finances in chaos. Without proper checks and balances, taxpayer money has been mismanaged, fueling further public outrage. The financial mismanagement, however, goes beyond missing audits and mounting debts. Henyard is also linked to a $3 million spending debacle, with allegations of blank checks and skyrocketing police expenses. These financial missteps have led to even more severe scrutiny. In response, former Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot has been called in to investigate the situation. The findings of her investigation have been nothing short of damning, with evidence supporting the accusations of unethical and reckless spending. Henyard's administration, once seen as a potential source of positive change for the town, is now mired in scandal. Trust in her leadership has eroded, and the numerous lawsuits, financial deficits, and reports of misconduct have overshadowed her tenure. Residents and critics alike question her ability to govern effectively. The town is now left grappling with the fallout from a leader whose leadership has been characterized by vindictive tactics, a disregard for public welfare, and a growing list of ethical violations. In Dalton, a town facing a staggering $65 million deficit and an increase in department expenses of 21%, Mayor Tiffany Henyard's administration is embroiled in scandal after scandal. Critics argue that Henyard's attempts to pass blame onto others, including her former right-hand man Keith Freeman, are hollow and unconvincing. Freeman, now charged with bankruptcy fraud, is rumored to be cooperating with investigators, a development that could further fuel the firestorm surrounding Henyard's leadership. Henyard, however, has continued to play the victim, insisting she was misinformed about Dalton's financial mess and claiming she had no idea about the town's growing deficits. This narrative has been met with widespread skepticism. Her denial, however, has not stopped her from pointing fingers at Freeman, suggesting that any irregularities or mismanagement were his doing rather than hers. Despite this, her excuses are increasingly falling flat as the evidence against her mounts. Observers note that Henyard's administration has been marked by unchecked extravagance, with many believing her attempts to shift blame are merely a distraction from her own misconduct. Town in a state of turmoil. The desperate deflection of responsibility by Mayor Tiffany Henyard has only exacerbated the crisis, as one of the most glaring issues of her tenure remains the police department's staggering spending increases. These financial burdens are particularly troubling given the economic hardships facing Dalton residents. The town's financial decisions, including allegations of misuse of funds and overspending, seem more akin to reckless abandon than responsible. Governance. Henyard has dismissed her critics' claims as politically motivated attacks, but the sheer scale of the financial discrepancies suggests a deeper issue rooted in mismanagement, or worse, intentional misconduct. As the town's financial crisis deepens, residents have grown fed up and are demanding transparency and accountability from their leadership. Instead of taking responsibility, Henyard continues to dig in her heels. Her dismissal of the allegations, and her insistence that she is a victim of a conspiracy appear increasingly out of touch with the unfolding reality in Dalton. Rumors are circulating that Keith Freeman, under the weight of his own legal troubles, is providing investigators with critical information about Henyard's alleged schemes, a revelation that could ultimately bring her administration crumbling down. But the chaos surrounding Henyard's leadership doesn't stop with financial mismanagement. Her administration has also been characterized by accusations of intimidation and retaliation against critics. There are allegations that workers were coerced into gathering information on political opponents, pointing to a disturbing abuse of power. These reports only fuel the perception that Henyard views the town not as a community to serve, but as a battleground to control. With the financial stability of Dalton in jeopardy and a growing list of scandals shadowing her every move, it seems Henyard's administration has pushed the town to the brink. For many residents, the breaking point has already passed. The lack of financial accountability, the allegations of intimidation, and the ever-growing deficit paint a grim picture of a leadership run amok. Observers note that the town's problems have been compounded by Henyard's unwillingness to address the crisis with transparency or genuine accountability. Instead, her administration has resorted to finger-pointing, denial, and divisive tactics, further alienating constituents and exacerbating the already precarious state of affairs in Dalton. Jason House, a local figure, has been leading the charge in calling out Henyard for her expensive trips and the massive multi-million-dollar deficit plaguing Dalton. Yet Henyard isn't backing down. Instead, she has resorted to accusing her critics of launching a smear campaign, insisting that the accusations against her are nothing more than personal attacks. She has even played the gender card, claiming that the village board is targeting her because she is a woman. Critics have dismissed this claim as flimsy and without merit, likening it to a weak excuse for her administration's failures. The situation has reached a crisis point, prompting the state of Illinois to step in and freeze Dalton's funds, effectively treating the town like an irresponsible teenager whose allowance has been revoked. Meanwhile, the FBI has been thoroughly investigating Henyard, with their work resembling the gripping season finale of a crime show. Agents reportedly searched Henyard's home with a fine-toothed comb, flipping cushions and scouring for hidden evidence. What they found wasn't just pocket change, it was significant sums of cash stashed away, akin to hidden treasure. This discovery has raised serious questions about the extent of Henyard's financial dealings and whether the money found is enough to bring her political career to a scandal-ridden end. The FBI's investigation doesn't stop with the physical cash found in Henyard's home. Agents are also delving deep into her financial records, company filings, and the operations of her controversial charity. With potential charges like wire fraud and embezzlement looming, Henyard could find herself trading her mayoral office for an orange jumpsuit if the allegations prove true. These are serious accusations that have left the residents of Dalton demanding answers and a complete overhaul of the town's leadership. Dalton has been thrown into disarray, and it's clear that Henyard's administration has left the town in financial and ethical ruin. The town's finances are in shambles, with state funds frozen and Dalton sinking deeper into chaos. The path to recovery looks bleak without decisive action to address the fallout. Residents and critics alike are questioning whether Dalton could have done more to prevent Mayor Tiffany Henyard's reckless behavior from spiraling out of control. Henyard's tenure has been marked by accusations of extravagance, misuse of public funds, lavish taxpayer-funded trips, and unchecked power. This has created a toxic environment where personal gain seems to have taken priority over the well-being of the community. The FBI now possesses critical evidence to investigate a range of potential crimes, from inappropriate spending to outright embezzlement. If the allegations are proven true, it would suggest that Henyard's actions have violated the trust of her constituents on a grand scale. To restore order in Dalton, it is clear that the town must clean house and implement safeguards to prevent similar issues in the future. This means holding Henyard and any accomplices accountable while putting a trustworthy and competent administration in place. Critics argue that the lack of accountability during Henyard's tenure allowed her to misuse her power and resources, unchecked. Beyond the immediate scandal, the long-term question remains: who will step up to lead Dalton out of this financial disaster? Whoever takes the reins will need to repair the town's tarnished image and ensure that the public can trust its leadership once again. Despite Henyard's attempts to dismiss the allegations as a smear campaign and claim that her critics are Driven by personal vendettas, the mounting evidence continues to pile up against her. For Dalton residents, it is a bitter reality to watch their mayor allegedly treat the town's finances like a personal piggy bank. With frozen state funds and a growing deficit, they are left questioning how they ended up in this mess. The situation highlights the larger implications of financial oversight and ethical governance in public office. Dalton's financial chaos underscores the importance of transparency and accountability, particularly for local governments that depend on limited resources to serve their community. Henyard's story serves as a cautionary tale about what can happen when public trust is betrayed and the misuse of power goes unchecked. Looking forward, Dalton's priority is clear. First, the town must ensure that Henyard's alleged mismanagement does not set a precedent for future leadership. Re-establishing sound financial practices and accountability measures will be crucial for regaining residents' trust. Second, those responsible for this crisis must face justice. As the FBI continues its investigation, the outcomes could serve as a turning point for Dalton, signaling a commitment to transparency and ethical governance.